In this one, we're going to what we call human rights. Human rights. So we should understand the concept of human rights is respecting someone's human rights. It is one of the tenets of rule of law. So what is human rights? Human rights is where someone has, like I have a right, I have my right to live or to do like a right to do something or like to live in a better way. Basically, it's what I can say is human rights. So while a government is in power, it should respect human rights. That is it. Now, with human rights, we are going to classify them into three generations. There is the first, the second, and the third generation. So there are three generations in human rights, which a person should know. Then, after we have classified them into three generations, we shall then come up with the two types of human rights that we have. There are what we call the derogable and the non-derogable rights. If you want to know them, they are in Article 43. That is the non-derogable. I mean, those are the derogable human rights. Then the non-derogable rights, these are in Article 44 of the Constitution. What does derogable and non-derogable mean? Derogable human rights, these are human rights that can be tempered or waived by the government. That even if you have a right, government can reduce or alter some of those rights and you don't enjoy them. But there are these rights that cannot be tempered with by the government. These are the so-called non-derogable rights under Article 44 of the Constitution. So I'll begin with the non-derogable rights that cannot be tampered with. However, that one I will classify them later. Let me first talk about human rights generally. Human rights in Uganda have been or are seen in Chapter 4 of the Constitution, and realize that whenever someone's right has been violated, he has a right to enforce it through courts of law under Article 50. You go to the High Court or any other court to enforce your human right which has been violated under Article 50. So we should know that these human rights are not given by the state. They are inherently born. It is not the government in power that should give you certain rights. No. These rights were born, you were born with these rights because God gave them to you. It is not the government that gave you, it is not the government that gives you human rights. Article 20 is very clear. Human rights are inherently born but not granted by the state. Then Article 21 will give us that what are certain other rights. We have a right to equality. We are all equal before the law, regardless of our race, regardless of our tribe, regardless of our social, regardless of our economical, religion, among others. Article 21 clearly tells us that we are all equal before the courts of law. Then the third right that we have is the right to life. The right to life is provided for under Article 22 of the Constitution. Article 22 of the Constitution tells us that we have the right to life. No one should take away someone's life unless it has been taken away by law. You realize that there are various offenses in law once committed. For example, murder, that once you commit it, they can give you punishment of life. I mean of death. Though there are various cases that have come in to challenge the death penalty, such as Susan Chigula and others versus Attorney General. All those cases have come in to explain or to urge out the death penalty in accordance to Article 22, which provides for right to life. Then the other right that we have is the right to liberty or the right to personal liberty. The right to personal liberty is in Article 23, but it is general. It comprises of right to apply for bail under Article 23, Clause 6A. You have a right to be visited while you are in custody. You have a right to a lawyer. You have a right. So basically, it is very wide. No one should stop you from going where you want. All that is a right to personal liberty under Article 23, which should be respected by the government because it is not given by the government, but it is inherently born. Then the other right is right or freedom from torture, inhuman and degrading acts. This is seen in Article 24 of the Constitution, and various cases have come in to interpret Article 24. For example, the case of Chamanywa, that case of Chamanywa. these cases of Salvatore Abuki versus Attorney General have all come in to explain the concept of the inhuman freedom from torture, inhuman and degrading acts. Why would you cane someone? That's why you see even today, it's not allowed to cane a student in school, though it is done as a matter of practice, but as a matter of law, it is not allowed. Why? Because of Article 24, which prohibits torture, inhuman and degrading acts. Then the other right that we have is in Article 25, and that is the right of freedom from slavery. Freedom from slavery, this is where someone should not treat another as a slave. Why? Because you are trying to run away from the eras of slave trade that existed, or the eras of slave. So you should not treat anyone as a slave or as your slave. Then the other right that we have as people, we have the right to property or right to own property as individuals or in a group. You have a right to own property under Article 26. And realize that when you own property, no one, even government, should take away your property unless they have first adequately compensated you for the land. You've seen this saga of the tree that they wanted to dig. So you cannot take away someone's property unless you are first adequately compensated. Why? Because they have a right to own property, either individually or as a group. Then the other right that we have is a right to privacy. We have right to privacy. That is Article 27. For example, I have a phone. You don't have to just come and pick it up and check. You don't have to distribute my private life unless with my consent, because I have a right to privacy under Article 27. Then the other right, which is one of the major rights, is a right to a fair hearing, which is provided for under Article 28 of the Constitution. While you are appearing before courts of law, you should be treated fairly, you should be heard, you should have represented, because you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. They should not punish you of an offense whose penalty is not prescribed in law, among other things. Why? You have a right to a fair hearing. Then the other right that we have is a right of freedom to associate. We have a right to movement, freedom of association. Article 29, I can associate with any other person so long as it does not infringe other people. Then the other right that you have again is a right to freedom of worship. Again, in the same Article 29, you have a right to worship any religion that you feel like you have, because in Uganda we don't have a state religion, so you have a right to worship. Then you have a right to move, freedom of movement. You go anywhere you want in Uganda. You have a right to move unless there are restrictions, such as when we had COVID-19, and this is clearly manifested again in Article 29 of the Constitution. Then you have a right to education, and this is clearly seen in Article 30 of the Constitution. Any person or Ugandan has a right to education and to study by the assistance of the government or their parents. Then you have a right to marry, or right to form a family under Article 31. If you are 18 and above, you have obtained consent, you are not restricted by any law, you can enter into marriage as per Article 31. There are various rights, rights to affirmative actions, Article 32, rights of children, Article 34, rights of women, Article 33. All those are various rights that we have in Uganda. Those are some of the rights that you should know. However, like I told you previously, let me talk about the non-derogable rights under Article 44. The first non-derogable right is we have a right to a fair hearing under Article 28 is non-derogable. Freedom from slavery is non-derogable. And then torture is non-derogable. Those are some of the non-derogable human rights that we have. Thank you very much.